I am Jason Matthews, and today I will tell you the story that completely changed my life when I discovered that my wife betrayed me right in my own home. The story begins on a regular morning, just like any other, when I woke up early to prepare for a long workday. As I sat drinking coffee in the kitchen, I suddenly noticed that something was off. Nicole, my wife, usually wakes up earlier than I do, preparing breakfast for the whole family and stressing about work. But today, she was sleeping later than usual, and when I entered the bedroom, I saw her lying on the bed, eyes wide open but seemingly lost in deep thought. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She looked at me, but her eyes seemed distant, unlike her usual morning demeanor. "Yeah, just a little tired," Nicole replied, her voice lacking the enthusiasm and energy I normally hear from her every morning. I said nothing more, just quietly observed her for a moment. At that moment, a strange feeling began to take over me, a vague but very strong suspicion. This wasn't the first time I had this feeling. Over the past few weeks, I had noticed several unusual signs, like her changing routines or those rushed phone calls when I wasn't around. But I had never seriously thought about it until today. As I walked out of the bedroom to get ready for work, I noticed Nicole's purse lying on the table by the door. But this purse, it wasn't the one she usually carries. It looked brand new, and there was an unfamiliar scent to it. At that moment, I couldn't understand why, but I had a strong feeling that this purse didn't belong to her. Immediately, I felt like I was being pulled into a situation I wasn't prepared for. I wanted to believe I was wrong, but the signs were too clear to ignore. "Nicole," I called from the living room. "Did you forget your purse here?" Nicole got up, her face showing a hint of tension. "Oh, no, that purse isn't mine," she replied, her voice slightly uneasy. "Maybe it's someone I met yesterday. I just left it here temporarily." I didn't press her further. I knew that if I kept investigating, I might uncover things I didn't want to know. But I couldn't stop. Something didn't feel right. At 10 a.m. that same day, I decided to do something I never thought I would. I was going to follow Nicole. I set my work aside and parked a short distance from the house. I waited, not because I wanted to torture myself, but because I needed to know the truth. And the truth was something I could no longer deny. A few minutes later, I saw her leave the house, get into her fancy car, and drive off without looking back. I followed her for a while, and then saw her enter a tall building in the downtown area. From the ground below, I saw a man walking towards her, and they exchanged a very intimate look. Not just friends, not just colleagues. There was something between them, something I couldn't deny. My heart seemed to stop. It felt as if I were sinking into a deep abyss, but I couldn't stop. I needed proof. I had to know. After following them for a while, I saw them enter a luxurious apartment, not the kind of place I expected Nicole to visit. I stood there, frozen, watching the wooden door close behind them. Inside, a strange wave of emotions washed over me, both anger and disappointment. And it became even clearer when I saw the purse she had left in the living room. It wasn't a coincidence. All the little signs I had ignored now became undeniable clues. I stood there for a long while, feeling numb. I knew I couldn't keep living in this mess. I had to do something, something more than just seeking revenge, something that would allow me to reclaim myself, to find out why everything had turned out like this. And I made my decision. Today would be a day I would never forget. I returned to my car, took a deep breath to calm myself. Seeing them together, in that apartment, felt like a punch to the chest. I couldn't just sit back and pretend everything was fine. I had to act. There was no way I could forget that moment I had witnessed. Inside, anger surged, coupled with a deep sense of betrayal. But I also knew that if I didn't control my emotions, I wouldn't get anywhere. When I got home, the house was eerily quiet. Nicole hadn't returned yet. I sat down at the table, opened my laptop, and began planning. I needed evidence, not just feelings and suspicions. Everything had to be documented. I decided to hire a private investigation team to get to the bottom of things. I didn't want to miss any detail, because I knew that these decisions could change my life forever. That night, I called an old friend, Steve, a security and investigation expert. He was cautious, and I knew I could trust him. I didn't need to say much. Steve understood my intentions right away. I'll help you, but you have to make sure you're ready, Steve said, his voice serious. I'm ready, I replied, though I wasn't sure about my feelings at that moment. At the same time, I decided to install surveillance equipment in the house, especially in Nicole's office and the spaces where she frequently spent time. Everything had to be discreet. I couldn't let her discover anything. I couldn't lose control. Then, I started preparing myself mentally. Nicole's phone calls over the past week, her absences, and the excuses she made could no longer save our marriage. This wasn't just an affair. It was a betrayal I couldn't overlook. Every time I looked at the family photo hanging on the wall, I felt a pang of pain. The happy moments we shared had suddenly turned into lies, and I couldn't let this pass without fairness. Steve began providing me with details about the man Nicole was seeing. He was a business partner in the construction industry, a man who had a wife and children. But what surprised me most was his name, Bradley Harris. I didn't know him, but I was sure he wasn't someone I wanted in my life. The clues started piling up. I didn't just want to witness the painful scene that Nicole and Bradley were creating. I wanted to trap them in a way they couldn't escape, and I was determined to make them pay. One night, after Nicole had left for work, I decided to investigate further. I couldn't just stand by. These two had destroyed my life, and now it was time to face the truth. I texted Steve, asking him to help me follow them. He agreed, and the plan was set in motion. The entire day, I couldn't focus on work. My mind kept racing with 100 thoughts. The images of betrayal played in my mind like an endless film that wouldn't stop. As night fell, I received a call from Steve. He was near Nicole's house and had captured some important footage. He sent me pictures of Nicole and Bradley walking out of a luxury hotel. They looked very intimate, no longer hiding anything. Nicole was smiling, a smile I had never seen on her face when she was with me. It felt as if someone had just ripped my heart apart. The feeling was indescribable. I asked myself if she had ever truly loved me. We had been through so much together, and now, I was facing this harsh reality. I decided not to hesitate any longer. Though it hurt, I had to confront her. But this time, I wouldn't be weak. I wouldn't let myself be the victim. I wanted her to see the truth, to see that I was no longer the man she could manipulate. When Nicole came home, I had everything prepared. The anger inside me was so great that I couldn't stop thinking about what I was about to do. "Nicole," I called, my voice cold. "We need to talk." She stopped, looking at me in surprise, her brow furrowed. "What's going on, Jason?" Her voice no longer had the sweetness it usually carried, only caution. "I'm done playing games. What's going on between you and Bradley?" I asked bluntly, without hesitation. Nicole opened her mouth, but then she stopped, as if she knew that any explanation now would be pointless. "Jason, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly, Nicole," I interrupted, my heart hollow. "I don't need to hear any more explanations. All I need now is justice." And at that moment, I wasn't just talking about justice for myself, but for the children we had raised together. Nicole stood there, silent for a long while, her eyes no longer reflecting the self-assurance she once had. I saw her hesitate, as if trying to find a way to respond, but in the end, only a heavy silence hung in the air. At that moment, I felt like a predator waiting for its prey, but not to attack, just to destroy everything that had been built on lies and deception. "Jason, you don't understand," she said, her voice shaking, yet still trying to maintain composure. "I understand very well," I responded without hesitation. "You think I didn't notice? Everything is so obvious, Nicole." Each word I said felt like a dagger to her heart, and I saw the tension on her face increase. Her eyes began to fill with tears, but I felt no compassion. My heart had no room for forgiveness anymore. The betrayal was too deep. I couldn't just let it go. "What will you do?" Nicole asked, her voice weak. "Are you going to destroy everything?" "Yes," I replied, my words cold and deliberate. "You haven't just destroyed this family. You've made me lose everything I ever trusted. I've spent years building a family, protecting you, and now you—" She opened her mouth to say something, but I cut her off. "What could you possibly say to make me believe you? You've been lying to me for too long. You have nothing to say anymore, except the truth? Her face turned pale, her eyes filled with regret, but it wasn't the remorse I needed. It was just the late realization of what she had done. Jason, I'm sorry, she whispered. I looked into Nicole's eyes, seeing something that resembled fear, but it wasn't the fear I was looking for. I felt no pity. Nicole, I didn't get a chance to apologize when you left me, but now, I will not forgive you. What will you do with Brad? She asked softly. I have a plan, I said, and I said nothing more. I walked away, leaving Nicole standing there, clutching the door frame, looking at me with helpless eyes. I didn't care anymore. Nothing could keep me in this house anymore, where all the beautiful memories had turned into cracks that couldn't be fixed. I couldn't just stop here. Everything had to end. I needed to face Bradley, and I couldn't let him escape the consequences of his actions. I called Steve, an old friend, to let him know it was time. I'll confront him, I said. Get everything ready. Steve knew I wasn't joking. He was a careful man, and I needed everything to go smoothly and accurately. Despite the rage inside me, I knew I had to remain calm to avoid messing up the plan. Bradley would pay, not just for hurting me, but for what he had done to my family. When I got there, I saw Bradley standing outside the apartment where he and Nicole had met. He stood there, cigarette in hand, looking relaxed as if everything wasn't about to come crashing down. He had no idea that today would be the last day he could live peacefully. I walked up to him, each step bringing me closer to the revenge I had been planning for so long. Bradley, I called, my voice low and cold. He turned around, his eyes widening for a moment when he realized it was me. I know what you think of me, I continued, and I also know you think you won't have to take responsibility for what you've done. But you'll see that things won't be as easy as you think. He started to step back, fear clearly visible on his face. Jason, you can't do this, he said, his voice trembling. You don't know anything about me. You don't understand. Don't talk about understanding, I replied. You've disappointed me. You've broken my family. And now, you'll pay. He didn't dare say another word. While I stood there, everything around us seemed to freeze. He looked at me with eyes full of fear, but I felt no sympathy. At that moment, Steve appeared from behind, holding important documents. He had gathered all the information about Nicole and Bradley's meetings, including photos and videos. I've got everything ready, Jason, Steve said seriously. Good, I replied. Now we'll make everything public. Bradley stared at us, his face turning pale as everything he thought was safe was suddenly exposed. He couldn't believe that he had been uncovered so easily. All the safety he thought he had was now shattered, and everything he was trying to protect had crumbled. No one can escape the consequences of betrayal, I said, each word like a sentence of condemnation. He just stood there, his face contorted, not daring to say a word. But I knew that his life would never be the same again. Like me, he would now have to live with the truth he had created. Bradley stepped back, his legs seemingly giving way. His face no longer had the smugness and composure it once had. Instead, there was panic, the realization of the horror that was coming. A strange sense of satisfaction washed over me, but I couldn't help but feel empty inside. Everything I had done wasn't just simple revenge. It was also retribution for the pain Nicole and Bradley had caused me. Steve stood beside me, his eyes cold as he looked at Bradley. The evidence Steve had provided only made the trap I had set even more foolproof. He couldn't escape, and I was determined not to let this betrayal pass without consequences. I told you. I spoke, my voice emotionless. You will pay for what you've done. Bradley struggled to stay steady, his voice trembling. Jason, I don't know what to say to apologize, but I don't want my life to fall apart like this. He looked at me, his eyes full of fear and pleading. You think I'll forgive you because you apologized? I replied, my voice unwavering. Do you think you can fix everything? You've destroyed my family, ruined everything I ever cared about, and now, all I can do is watch you suffer the consequences. I said nothing more, but I knew that things had gone too far. Bradley would face not only financial loss, but also the loss of everything he had built in his life. After everything fell apart, I began to carry out the final steps of my plan. It wasn't just about confronting Bradley, but also making sure Nicole couldn't escape her responsibility. I reached out to a lawyer, informed him of the situation, and asked him to help me protect my interests in this divorce. Nicole no longer had the confident demeanor she once had. Now she was left with fear, worrying about what I would do. She didn't dare resist, didn't dare say anything when I demanded a fair division of assets and rights. But despite my actions, I felt an overwhelming sense of pain. Even though everything was going according to plan, I couldn't stop thinking about the kids. Ethan and Olivia, they didn't deserve to witness this. I couldn't erase their faces, their innocent eyes, untainted by guilt. I knew this divorce would change their lives forever. And yet, I still couldn't forgive Nicole. She didn't just betray me emotionally, but also betrayed my trust. My family had been torn apart, and that made it impossible for me to easily let go of this revenge. I wanted her to feel what I had felt, even if it meant the unbearable, crushing pain. Nicole had started seeking comfort from her close friends, but I didn't care. I decided not to give her the chance to make things right. Her lies had gone on long enough. I didn't need her anymore, and I wouldn't allow her to keep hurting my family. As for Bradley, he had begun to feel the weight of what he had caused. I had found a way to make him face consequences, not just for me, but for his own family. He wouldn't escape the repercussions of what he had done. That night, I got a call from Steve. He said that Bradley and Nicole's accounts had been frozen, and they couldn't withdraw money or do anything to counter the evidence I had gathered. Both of them were now facing a completely different life. A life with no safety, no future plans, no freedom. Steve had also contacted Bradley's business partners, causing him to lose financial and social support. In the end, he was left alone, in the darkness he had created for himself. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, but also a hollow emptiness. Everything had changed, but could I continue living with this pain? Could I forgive myself and Nicole? Even though everything had gone too far, I still couldn't stop asking myself, will this revenge be enough to heal the wounds inside me? I knew I had paid for Nicole and Bradley's betrayal, but in my heart, there was still a deep wound that nothing could heal. In the days that followed, I tried to continue my life, even though it was no longer the same. Meetings with friends, quiet evenings with the kids, no longer felt the same. The wounds I had to bear still clung to me, and I realized that, even though I had won in this battle, what I really needed was healing from within. One afternoon, as I sat in the living room, looking out the window, I suddenly realized something. Revenge couldn't bring happiness. It only gave me temporary satisfaction, but then the pain came back. And as a man, I had to face myself, my pain, and my loss, in order to move forward.